Coach Trap, if you're still on here, can you recommend Alex Karp finally do a venture arm? You got the free cash flow now. You got a balance sheet that's stacked. Use some of that money, create a venture fund so your former employees who are looking to build something on their own that want to break out, you let them leave with a few dollars here and there with some seed funding, let them go wild and create something new and get a 20x, maybe a 100x return on your money. Every other Silicon Valley SaaS vendor right now has a venture arm. Palantir, with all the experience that they have, because they're founders, they have Peter Thiel, who's probably one of the greatest Silicon Valley investors. You need a venture arm. Use that free cash flow to develop other companies that are going to be running on your platform and that are actually going to be able to sell products and use Palantir as the platform. I don't know, just what does it say? They enable alums. I know, but they don't have a venture arm. As far as I know, they don't have a venture arm.
That is confusing why they don't have a small $20 million venture fund.
I would say a venture arm that's directly tied to their balance sheet, because yes, they enable alums to build value, which is great, but at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything for shareholders. Right? If a company 10x's, yes, that alum did very well, but what does that do for shareholders? Whereas at least with Snowflake, huh?
I was going to say, it might be something that happens. I mean, at the moment, they probably were just looking forward to getting as much revenue through the door as they could. They were probably trying to get to the GAAP profitability piece. And now that that's kind of in sight and they're looking to hold on to that throughout the rest of 2023 and go into 2024. And now they have $2 billion in the bank. I mean, maybe that's just the next obvious step for them, is to kind of start thinking about something like that.
Do you think Foundry for Builders is basically their venture fund? Because they added a new drone company for Foundry for Builders last week. I mean, that's,
Or I didn't like seeing Hex end up being with Snowflake Ventures, considering that the founder was former Palantir.
Well, what I do see as a potential avenue for, because there was some news about Fedstart this week, and some of the
we got to talk about that last.
We're starting to use that. I see that as a potential venture arm, whether intentional or unintentional.
Okay, so let me set that up, and then you'll go real quick. Fedstart product they launched a couple weeks ago. Basically, they said there's a shit ton of defense spending from VCs for these defense tech startups, about $34 billion last year. All this money makes no sense if these startups can't sell to the government because they don't have IL4, IL5, or IL6 accreditation. So if we could basically license our platform to promise them that their software, whatever they're selling to the government, is secure within what they call our container, we can just get, SaaS margins off that, consulting fees off that, and there's another way to make more money. So Matt, I guess, do you see that as kind of like their venture arm for the defense technology space?
Yeah, so to give people some context, so Palantir has gotten Fedstart piece of their infrastructure that kind of Mitt was talking to IL5, and I forget what company it was, but it was the first that I had seen sort of for Fedstart.
Bloodhound.
Yeah, Bloodhound, and I forget who owns Bloodhound.
Spectre Ops.
Spectre Ops, yeah. So it's a government-facing sort of piece, and so it kind of kickstarts exactly what Amit said. If they find something, or the people that create those companies obviously are going to integrate with Palantir to be able to use their software. I feel like if it fits their culture, because Palantir has a very specific culture, then it's something that might be an ability, unintentionally or intentionally, that Palantir could pick something up and add that to them. And I'm assuming that if these guys are able to create very niche-like products, which is kind of what Palantir is all about, then it can kickstart it right back into Palantir. Anyway.
Chris, what do you think about this? There's a shit ton of money. Even Mark Andreessen, one of the biggest venture capitalists in the world, said they missed out on Palantir going into defense technology. Do you think Palantir could capitalize off taking a decent amount of that? Because you can't sell unless you have accreditation, and Palantir can just license their accreditation.
I'm not too well versed on the subject, so I couldn't tell you. I have no clue. I just I know that this is a space that's growing a lot more than past years, because I think the military and like government itself, especially the Defense Department, realizes that most warfare that's coming is not going to be kinetic warfare. It's going to be a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic. So you're going to have to make sure that your software is 10 times better than what it is today. And the government in the past has always been terrible at software. So the private companies in the US are like the best companies in the world. It's kind of stupid for the U.S. government not to reach into the private sector partnerships to create products and tools in terms of software that could really like be game changers in the future. So yeah, I think overall the sector is growing, and this is one of those areas where Palantir's already got a leg up on their competitors, and they could capitalize on it. So no, I think this is a good business for them. Let it grow.
Okay. We're getting near 12 o'clock. It's 12:05. I have one last topic for tonight, even though we're still 16 days away from earnings. I was looking at some of the retail shareholder questions today on Robinhood, and it reminded me we're a special group of investors. There was people saying, when are you going to give a dividend? And I'm just like, all right.
Y'all retarded. Venture arm. That's what
So
you
here's
need.
my question. Let's end it off, and the chat can participate too. What is one question, if you got to be an analyst, to ask Alex Karp directly on earnings, you would ask? You can take a second, think about it. What would be one question you would ask?
Considering that you let Andrew's engineer, who used to be one of your senior employees, go and got no value on him whatsoever, are you considering launching a venture arm to mitigate that so that you can build value for shareholders instead of just stockpiling cash and doing barely anything with it?
Okay, solid question. Steve, what would be your question?
I think I'd want to know how they're going to use their cash and what their plan is. Because to get to a valuation that I want to see it get to, the numbers have to make sense. Yeah. This can't be something that is 80 times free cash flow. I want to know how they're going to use their cash to accelerate growth, because look, I would say that most of us think AIP is going to be huge, and that they're going to continue to grow customers, but they got to continue to do what they're doing. Stockpile of cash, no debt. So what do you do? Are you going to acquire somebody? You're going to build another arm? How do you allocate that cash to drive shareholder value?
Okay. Matt, UDoc CEO, your question?
UDoc CEO. No, it's far from. Palantir has released 3 major platforms over the past 5 to 6 years. My question to them would be, while AIP is revolutionary and will connect a lot of the great products that we have from Foundry, Apollo, Gotham, where does Palantir see their runway in the next 5 to 10 years of additional platforms that will be released that people might not necessarily be thinking about? And do you see those as small additions that will integrate well with Foundry and others? Or is there other sort of platforms that other companies haven't even really thought of yet that you guys will kind of be the first to market for?
Okay.
And I don't think I think people don't give that credit, right? I think people are just like, they assume, and then they get excited about, or don't even think about, what's next, and they don't think that Palantir hasn't reinvented themselves 3 to 4 times over the past 5 years, 6 years, and I don't think people are thinking about that. So I think that's very important.
Well, I stand corrected. According to this website, I just looked it up to see if there's something called Palantir Ventures, and someone's already got the name and the domain. I'm pretty sure they're not involved with the regular Palantir, but someone created, and it says, "Welcome to Palantir Ventures, our focus on creating and building businesses from ideas through exit."
So there is a venture firm that exists.
Yeah.
I would simply ask, and maybe my question would be answered during the presentation, but what has this whole hundreds of conversations, 12 months of demand in 1 month turned into? Like, even if it's not crazy revenue yet, is the adoption of AIP happening at a rate where you think the land, expand, scale strategy is working? And I'm pretty sure they're going to answer that to an extent, but I would want to know what they think the trajectory of AIP really looks like, and what sectors, like what industries do they think? I know they're going to say, yeah, it could be big in every industry, but like life sciences, energy, healthcare, like really, where do you see AIP going from there? I would also ask about Apollo, because I think we've barely gotten any updates on what Apollo is doing in the commercial sector, probably because it's not selling as well. And I would want to know, do you have a plan?
I think that's false.
To get it scale. Hopefully it is false, but we don't know as shareholders. We know nothing about Apollo publicly from a business perspective, in my opinion.
I just want to highlight really quick how many companies that Palantir missed out on in terms of not having a VC fund to back some of their own people. Adapar, which Joe Lonsdale, of course, I'm not sure that they could have gotten into that anyway, because the fallout between Lonsdale. Our firm, they could have got into our firm very early because Nathan Gettings was an original co-founder. right?
Oh, really? A Palantir?
Amplitude. Yep.
Wow, I don't know that.
Anduril, Blend Labs, Ironclad, OpenSea. You see what I mean? These are all the things that could have been unicorns that Palantir could have disproportionately benefited from having former employees. You didn't have a venture fund. Employees left. They took their know-how and their knowledge with them, and you got none of the benefits. You basically trained a killer and then did not capitalize on him when he went out there and did a fucking phenomenal job in developing software. So venture fund, do a venture fund. Your former employees
free
Yep.
at this point. They got 1.4, 1.6 billion sitting in T-bills, generating 3-4%. Use that interest to set up a venture fund. It's free.
Yup.
Free.
Yeah.
LP
17
baby.
million. They got 17 million from that interest. Imagine giving 100,000 to like 40 people that want to start something.
Okay, they got 17 million. Extrapolate that for the year and throw it into a fund. Throw $50 million into a fund. It's free money.
Yeah.
Yep. And now they can build products and software based on Palantir Foundry and Foundry applications. And now you've got a long stream of revenue coming your way in the future. Plus, all that I don't know, $1 million investment can turn into a fucking $1 billion return if you play it right. You know, so just saying, better than T-bills.
Stake. I mean,
isn't that what the SPAC thing was?
Someone said, "Oh, Chris, they were busy investing in really successful SPACs."
The problem with the SPACs too is they wasn't idea to inception, and it wasn't Palantir people. Like the thing about Palantir people, they go through like 7 rounds of interviews to get in. These are smart motherfuckers. So when they are like, "I have an idea," you as a company should listen to this killer that was smart enough to get into your company about their idea, you know, versus Faraday Future.
But I think a lot of things that that you need to get a little bit further down in terms of the profitability and maybe the cash point where you're truly profitable and making a lot of cash to the point where then you can make systematic $50 million, $100 million investments into things and not really even notice it being gone. And I think there's just with what happened with the SPAC thing, I think it's gonna always, while it is different, I think from the eye of the normal retail investor that doesn't really think about it the same, I think you need to give it a little bit of time before that.
I don't think anyone would care. The SPACs were public companies. That's why they got scrutiny. Startups are known to fail, right?
But who else? You're studying it pretty. You're studying it pretty in depth, Amit. I mean, you're the one looking at this and talking about it once a week. The average retail investor is going to be like, "Oh, this is a bad idea."
That's true.
I mean, that's me chatting, but I think that that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where capital allocation comes in, man. You have to be smart as a capital allocator to figure that out. I feel like they're going to do it. Then Chris is going to take all the credit. Yeah, of course, man. That's what I do. I took credit for all the Foundry cons that they had. That was my idea. Fuck Alex Karp. He didn't figure that out. I did. All right. Ukraine. I told him, hey, you need to reach out to Ukraine.
Modern Warfare videos in February 2022. I remember that. That was with CodeStrap on the podcast. Yeah.
I was like, hey, listen, Ukraine, and I created a video way before Palantir announced that they were going to be in Russia. I did a video saying, hey, Palantir should probably reach out to Russia. I should actually publish that and tag Alex Karp on it and saying, thanks for listening to me, Alex. Good job.
It's hilarious.